The last radio transmission was calm. Too calm. I don't know where we are. Those words echoed through my mind long after I first heard them. They weren't shouted in panic. They weren't interrupted by screams or alarms. They were spoken almost casually, as if the pilot believed there was still time to figure everything out. Then, silence. Complete silence. No distress call, no explosion, no final goodbye. Just an empty stretch of sky over the Atlantic Ocean, where planes have vanished for decades without leaving behind the answers the world desperately wanted. I'm Asim, and today I'm taking you deep into one of the most enduring mysteries on Earth, a place where compasses have reportedly spun without reason, experienced pilots have lost their bearings, and entire aircraft have disappeared as though the ocean simply swallowed them whole. It's called the Bermuda Triangle, and whether you believe in science, coincidence, or something far more mysterious, the stories you're about to hear continue to leave investigators searching for answers. When I first started researching the Bermuda Triangle, I expected to uncover a simple explanation. Maybe bad weather, maybe human error, perhaps exaggerated newspaper headlines that transformed ordinary accidents into legendary mysteries. I thought that after reading enough reports, studying enough maps, and listening to enough aviation experts, everything would finally make sense. Instead, every answer uncovered another question. The Bermuda Triangle isn't marked by warning signs floating in the ocean. No invisible wall tells pilots they've crossed into dangerous territory. On a map, it's simply a massive region stretching roughly between Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico. Every single day, ships and aircraft cross these waters safely. Commercial airliners fly overhead. Cruise ships pass through without incident. Millions of people travel across this region every year. So why has this particular area gained such a terrifying reputation? That question pulled me deeper than I ever expected. As I dug through decades of records, I realized the mystery wasn't built around just one disappearance. It was built on dozens. Some involved tiny private aircraft. Others involved military planes with highly trained crews. A few vanished so completely that not even a single confirmed piece of wreckage was ever recovered. How could modern aircraft disappear so completely? The deeper I looked, the stranger the stories became. One account described pilots reporting that both their compass and navigation equipment had suddenly become unreliable. Another spoke of weather conditions changing with almost unbelievable speed, turning a peaceful flight into a desperate struggle for survival within minutes. Then there were reports from experienced aviators who insisted the ocean below looked wrong. The horizon blurred until sea and sky became almost impossible to separate. At first, I dismissed these stories as exaggerations. Then I found official reports that made me stop reading for a moment. One case, in particular, has haunted investigators for generations. On December 5, 1945, 5 U Navy training bombers lifted off from Florida on what should have been a routine exercise. The mission was straightforward. The weather looked favorable. The crews were experienced. They carried enough fuel to complete the flight and return safely. None of them ever came back. As I listened to the surviving radio transcripts, I felt something unsettling. The flight leader repeatedly reported that he couldn't recognize the islands beneath him. His compass appeared to be malfunctioning. Soon, other pilots admitted they were just as confused. Instead of flying confidently back toward land, they drifted farther into uncertainty. Ground controllers tried to guide them home. The pilots couldn't agree which direction home even was. Imagine sitting in that cockpit. Blue water stretched endlessly beneath you. Fuel slowly disappeared from the gauges. Every direction looked exactly the same. Your navigation instruments refused to make sense, and every decision risked taking you even farther from safety. Then the radio messages became weaker, more fragmented. until they vanished completely. No confirmed wreckage, no survivors, no final explanation. The Navy immediately launched a massive search operation. Rescue aircraft filled the sky. Ships spread across the ocean looking for any sign of the missing bombers. Families waited desperately for news that never arrived, but what happened next transformed an already frightening mystery into something almost impossible to believe. One of the rescue planes searching for the missing aircraft disappeared as well. The rescue mission had barely begun when the impossible seemed to happen again. As I traced the official timeline, I couldn't believe what I was reading. A large rescue aircraft, carrying a crew trained for emergencies, lifted off with one purpose: to find the 5 missing bombers. It was one of the most capable search planes of its time. If anyone could locate the lost aircraft, surely it could. Then, without warning, it disappeared too. One nearby ship reported seeing a bright flash over the ocean, followed by what looked like an explosion. Yet when search crews rushed to the location, they found almost nothing. No floating wreckage field, no survivors calling for help. Just the endless Atlantic, calm on the surface, hiding whatever had happened below. I remember staring at that report for several minutes. Was it simply an unfortunate accident? Or was this another piece of a much larger puzzle? That question refused to leave me. The more disappearances I investigated, the more I noticed something unsettling. Many of them followed a similar pattern. Flights began normally. Pilots sounded confident. Weather reports often showed nothing extraordinary before departure. Then communication became strange. Sometimes pilots reported that their instruments no longer made sense. Sometimes they claimed they couldn't identify landmarks they knew should be there. And sometimes they never spoke again. Naturally, I wondered if the Bermuda Triangle possessed some mysterious force capable of confusing navigation systems. It sounded unbelievable, yet countless theories pointed in that direction. Some people blamed unusual magnetic variations, suggesting that compasses behaved differently inside the triangle than in other parts of the world. It certainly sounded dramatic. But as I dug deeper, I discovered that Earth's magnetic field isn't perfectly uniform. There are places where magnetic north and true north align differently, forcing pilots to account for small variations. Modern aircraft are designed with this in mind, and experienced aviators train extensively to compensate for those differences. So, if magnetic variations weren't enough to explain entire disappearances, what was? That question led me into another theory, one rooted not in mystery, but in nature itself. The Atlantic Ocean surrounding the Bermuda Triangle is remarkably unpredictable. Warm tropical waters collide with changing weather systems, creating conditions that can transform within minutes. A calm sky can suddenly give way to violent thunderstorms powerful enough to challenge even experienced pilots. I watched weather simulations showing towering storm clouds rising thousands of feet into the atmosphere. Inside them, turbulence can become so violent that aircraft are tossed like leaves in the wind. Powerful downdrafts force planes toward the ocean while lightning disrupts visibility and communication. Standing safely on the ground, it's easy to underestimate how quickly the sky can turn hostile. But then another thought crossed my mind. If severe weather explained everything, why were so many disappearances never accompanied by confirmed wreckage? Commercial accidents usually leave evidence. Pieces of metal, floating debris, fuel slicks, something. Yet several Bermuda Triangle cases seemed to end with nothing at all. That absence became almost as mysterious as the disappearances themselves. As I continued searching, oceanographers offered another possibility. The Bermuda Triangle sits near incredibly deep sections of the Atlantic. In some places, the ocean floor plunges thousands of meters below the surface. Strong currents, including the powerful Gulf Stream, move through the region at remarkable speed. Imagine an aircraft crashing into those waters. Within hours, Floating debris could drift far from the impact site. Smaller fragments might sink rapidly into underwater canyons so deep that recovering them becomes an enormous challenge. Even with today's technology, searching vast areas of the ocean remains incredibly difficult. Suddenly, the lack of wreckage didn't seem quite as impossible. Yet there was still something that bothered me. Some pilots described moments that couldn't easily be blamed on storms or currents. They spoke of strange haze that erased the horizon, making the sea blend seamlessly into the sky. Without a clear horizon, spatial orientation becomes dangerously difficult. A pilot may unknowingly begin descending while believing the aircraft is level. It's a terrifying illusion. Your eyes insist everything looks normal. Your instruments tell a different story. If confusion lasts only seconds, it can already be too late. I began to realize that perhaps the Bermuda Triangle didn't need supernatural powers to become deadly. Maybe it simply combined some of aviation's greatest hazards into one unforgiving stretch of ocean. But just as that explanation started to make sense, I uncovered eyewitness accounts from experienced pilots who insisted they had encountered something they still couldn't explain. Their stories would pull this mystery into an entirely different direction, and they would leave me wondering whether science alone could answer every question surrounding the Bermuda Triangle. The more pilot testimonies I uncovered, the more I realized that not every mystery begins with panic. Some began with complete confidence. One experienced pilot described flying through perfectly normal weather when an unusual white haze suddenly surrounded the aircraft. It wasn't an ordinary cloud. The sunlight seemed to bend strangely, and the horizon disappeared as if someone had erased the line separating the ocean from the sky. For several long moments, there was nothing but an endless blanket of pale light in every direction. Then, the navigation instruments started behaving unpredictably. As I listened to that account, I tried to imagine sitting in that cockpit. Every instinct tells a pilot to trust the instruments, yet when those instruments appear to disagree with one another, doubt creeps in. And in aviation, even a few seconds of hesitation can become the difference between life and death. I wondered how many of the missing crews experienced that same uncertainty. We'll probably never know. Some investigators believe these strange reports can be explained by powerful weather phenomena known as microbursts, rapidly changing air currents, or unusual atmospheric conditions that distort visibility. Others point to rogue waves, massive walls of water capable of swallowing even large ships without much warning. Every scientific explanation answered one question, but it created another. Then I came across one of the most haunting realities of all. The Bermuda Triangle doesn't have to destroy an aircraft completely to make it disappear forever. The Atlantic Ocean itself can finish the job. I studied maps of the ocean floor beneath the triangle. What looked like an ordinary stretch of blue water on the surface concealed enormous underwater trenches, steep cliffs, and vast plains lying thousands of meters below. If an aircraft entered those depths, finding it would be like searching for a single grain of sand in an entire desert. Even today, despite satellites, sonar, and underwater robots, large portions of the ocean remain unexplored. That realization sent a chill down my spine. For decades, families waited for answers that never came. Parents hoped their children would somehow be found. Wives and husbands refused to stop believing. Every new search raised hope, only to end with another heartbreaking silence. I couldn't stop thinking about those families. To the rest of the world, these disappearances became fascinating mysteries. To them, they became unfinished stories. And then I reached the case that many people around the world still remember. Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370. Although it didn't disappear inside the Bermuda Triangle, its mysterious vanishing proved something unsettling. Even in the 21st century, with advanced radar systems, satellites, GPS technology, and international search operations, a large commercial aircraft carrying hundreds of people could still disappear in a way that left investigators struggling for answers. That case changed the way I viewed every earlier mystery. Perhaps the ocean has always been better at keeping secrets than we care to admit. Still, the Bermuda Triangle continued to attract theories far beyond science. Some believed extraterrestrials were responsible. Others spoke of underwater civilizations, lost continents like Atlantis, or portals that somehow distorted time and space. I'll admit, those stories are captivating. They capture the imagination in ways that scientific reports never could. But as I sifted through decades of evidence, I noticed something important. Extraordinary claims often appeared where reliable evidence became scarce. When people don't have answers, the imagination naturally fills the empty spaces. That doesn't make every mystery fake. It simply reminds me how uncomfortable uncertainty can be. Yet one mystery refused to leave my mind. Why did so many experienced pilots, sailors, and investigators continue to treat the Bermuda Triangle with such respect? Not fear. Respect. Because they understood something that many of us watching safely from home often forget. Nature doesn't need supernatural powers to be unforgiving. A sudden thunderstorm, a navigation error, fuel running lower than expected, powerful ocean currents, one small mistake followed by another. Sometimes disasters aren't caused by a single catastrophic event. Sometimes they're created by a chain of ordinary problems that slowly become impossible to escape. As I reached the end of my research, I realized I was standing between two worlds. One was filled with legends, myths, and unexplained disappearances that continue to fascinate millions. The other was grounded in aviation science, oceanography, and decades of painstaking investigation. Both told part of the story, but only one question remained. After everything I had discovered, was the Bermuda Triangle truly one of the world's greatest unsolved mysteries? Or had its terrifying reputation been built from decades of misunderstood tragedies? The answer surprised even me. As I reached the final pages of countless investigation reports, one thing became impossible to ignore. The Bermuda Triangle wasn't hiding a single secret. It was hiding many. At first, I wanted one answer. One discovery that would tie every disappearance together and finally explain why this patch of ocean had become so legendary. But the more I learned, the more I realized that reality is rarely that simple. Some aircraft almost certainly disappeared because of violent weather that developed faster than crews could react. Tropical storms, towering thunderclouds, sudden turbulence, and powerful downdrafts can overwhelm even experienced pilots when conditions change within minutes. Other accidents likely came down to navigation errors. Flying over endless open water offers very few visual references. If visibility suddenly deteriorates or instruments become difficult to interpret, even small mistakes can compound rapidly. A slight deviation in course may place an aircraft hundreds of miles from where its crew believes it should be. Fuel begins to run low. Anxiety grows. Every decision becomes harder than the last. Then there is the ocean itself. The Atlantic surrounding the Bermuda Triangle is one of the busiest shipping and aviation corridors in the world, yet beneath its surface lies an environment that is astonishingly difficult to search. Strong currents can scatter debris across enormous distances. Deep underwater canyons can hide wreckage beyond the reach of ordinary recovery efforts. Sometimes the evidence simply disappears long before investigators arrive. As I reflected on everything I had uncovered, another realization slowly emerged. Millions of flights have safely crossed the Bermuda Triangle. Thousands of ships continue to sail through it every single year. If the region truly possessed some mysterious force capable of swallowing every aircraft that entered, modern aviation simply couldn't operate there. Yet it does. Every day. That doesn't mean every mystery has been solved. Far from it. Several disappearances remain unexplained because the available evidence is incomplete. Missing wreckage, damaged flight records, changing witness accounts, and the sheer size of the search area mean some questions may never receive definitive answers. And perhaps that's why the Bermuda Triangle continues to capture our imagination. Human beings are naturally drawn toward mysteries that resist easy explanations. We want certainty. We want closure. We want every story to have a clear ending. But the ocean doesn't always provide one. Standing at the edge of this mystery, I found myself thinking less about myths and more about the people behind every headline. The pilots who believed they would return home after an ordinary flight. The passengers who boarded an airplane expecting nothing more than another routine journey. The families who waited by telephones, hoping for news that never came. For them, this was never about legends. It was about loved ones. Perhaps that's the most important lesson I took away from this journey. The Bermuda Triangle isn't frightening because it proves the existence of the supernatural. It's frightening because it reminds us how powerful nature can be, how vast our oceans still are, and how much of our own planet remains beyond complete human understanding. Even today, scientists continue improving satellite technology, underwater mapping, and search equipment. Every advancement helps us understand the oceans a little better than before. Some mysteries that once seemed impossible have eventually been solved through patience, technology, and careful investigation. Others remain unanswered, and they may remain that way for generations. Maybe one day, a deep-sea expedition will uncover wreckage that has rested silently on the ocean floor for decades. Maybe forgotten flight records or new scientific discoveries will finally explain cases that have puzzled investigators for generations. Or maybe the Bermuda Triangle will continue to remind us that not every mystery is destined to be completely solved. As I finished this investigation, I realized I had started with a single question. Why do planes disappear in the Bermuda Triangle? The answer wasn't a monster beneath the waves or a portal hidden in the clouds. It was something both more ordinary and, in many ways, more unsettling. A vast ocean, unpredictable weather, human limitations, and a handful of disappearances that still refuse to surrender all of their secrets. I'm Asim, and after exploring every theory, every report, and every mystery I could find, I can say this with confidence. The Bermuda Triangle remains one of the world's most fascinating legends, not because we know exactly what happened, but because a few unanswered questions continue to survive where certainty ends and mystery begins. And perhaps that is why, every time another aircraft crosses those waters, people still glance toward the map and wonder.